I think it's time to talk about Wish.
Yay.
And here's what we need to talk about. And we have to be very careful about how we talk about it. Alan reviewed the film last week and gave it a very bad review. Before we get into this backlash, Alan, if you could just sort of recap briefly your review.
Yeah. Essentially, this is the worst Disney animated film in the company's history, and I'm referring specifically to the actual animation of this. It felt cheap. It felt like that the veteran animators of the past have been fired, or it's like it doesn't feel like a Walt Disney animated feature. Images are bland. The action is bland, and there's and you're going to see that there's a lot of things they did in this movie to hide the fact that the people who animated this don't know how to animate animated features or animate at all. I'll give you the best example, but when you watch Wish, there's a point where King Magnifico is riding a horse down a path, and when you watch that scene, the camera is following the King Magnifico over his shoulder, which means Disney animators don't know how to animate horses' feet and legs anymore. I mean, that's the saddest thing about this movie is people don't know how to animate, and now we're calling this the 100th, the movie that commemorates 100 years of the Walt Disney Company.
But it's also like the one thing, just as a tribute to Disney animation and what was achieved with Disney animation, is it's one of those things where a lot of times you and I see a lot of films that will be considered art films, right, Alan? Like this is an art film. This isn't for mainstream audiences. And in some cases, like, like a movie has something to say and it does it in a very artful way. Disney animation was known for not just making something that is a work of art unto itself, but also a piece of incredible entertainment. And that's, I think, what Disney animation had a reputation for.
Yeah. I used to buy the art books,
right
after it came out. I mean, the book for Lion King is gorgeous, and because of just the painted backgrounds and and I stopped buying that a long time ago. Those things, but you're right. I mean, these are standards you expect from the Walt Disney Company. These are standards you expect from Walt Disney himself, and it's gone. It's absolutely gone.
Well, sometimes it's like when something's a work of art, it's not necessarily good entertainment, right? So art, entertainment, what Disney animation did was art and entertainment were on the same level. A work of art that is also entertaining. That to me is the pinnacle. That's what you would strive for, right? And this was not achieved in this. Your review last week, when you discussed the film, and then the clip of the movie has blown up. At least for our channel. Our videos generally get between 5 and 10,000 views. This one is like over 50,000 views right now.
Yeah. And paired with your controversial Marvel comments, this was a very good weekend for the Film Threat YouTube channel.
Yeah. But here's what happened. Post the review hitting, a lot of people saw this review. A lot of people. So we have to be very careful about how we discuss this. A lot of people who worked on the movie reached out to us.
Let's broaden it. We'll say that we should broaden it by saying we were people who worked at Walt Disney Animation and currently work at Walt Disney Animation have reached out to us.
And former people who worked at Disney Animation reached out to us to tell us that this was a disaster behind the scenes, that the original intention of Wish was to be a tribute to the 100 years of Disney animation history. And it was intended to be the story of the origin of the song When You Wish Upon a Star, which ties into Disney's past. None of that is a part of what Wish finally ended up being, which is also a film I have not seen yet. The comments, which I did share with Alan, and the people who reached out to me directly also asked me to pass their comments along to Alan. They asked that they all remain anonymous, but I think we can kind of bullet point the basics, which would not lead to any particular person who worked on the production. But Alan, can you briefly summarize some of what was said without anything that is revealing?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest one is that the corporate culture at the Walt Disney Company has has taken a very bad turn, and this happened several years ago, to the point where I'll say it this way: the people were being hired because of their skin color and their gender versus their experience and their abilities and their talents, and that people were being put to the forefront because they were not white and not male. And the other thing is the environment got so hostile that when I mentioned that the old veterans got fired, I don't know if they got fired, but it got so bad that they left. You know, that's why Glenn Keane is at a different company. That's why Andrew Dejas is at a different company. That's why a lot of the people you associate with the Disney Renaissance is no longer at the Walt Disney Company.
And by the way, those are not the names of people who reached
Yeah,
out
they're
to
not.
us.
Glenn
Those
Keane
are
and Andrew Dejas is
those are not the
names.
people.
But they are. I mean, I just found it very sad when I see them popping up in different projects, you know, in non-Disney projects, and wondering why is the Disney company not holding on to this fountain of wisdom, this library of wisdom, and and it seems to be true that the truly talented animators, most of them have gone elsewhere to other companies, leaving inexperienced people behind, and leaving behind a culture that people are in fear of losing their jobs if they say anything.
Well, and the other thing is I find that it's not particularly surprising that the story of Wish evolved from the origin of the song When You Wish Upon a Star
Mhm.
into a story about overthrowing the king of a kingdom who's more experienced, right? Like them. So I just don't find that not surprising at all. The other thing that was pointed out in the emails that were sent to us, everyone mentioned activists. The word
Mhm.
activist was a key word in all of the emails that we received.
Yeah.
They just said there are activists within the company that are using their jobs as an opportunity to just effectively overthrow the veterans who actually
Mhm.
know something. You pointed out in your review something very interesting, that even in the Disney class that they teach at like Disney camp, which anyone can go to, they teach a very simple concept, which is you never have a character in the center of the screen
Yeah.
as is pictured. It's center that's boring. You have them off center somewhat because it makes for
Yeah, it's the
more
rule of thirds.
the
And
rule of
also,
thirds.
it's the final scene of The Fablemans when the young Steven Spielberg approaches John Ford, and he gives him this exact advice: if it's in the center, it's boring. If it's off center, it's interesting.
That literally is like a film class there with David Lynch's
Yeah,
John Ford, giving a young Spielberg protege or
yeah,
Spielberg, it's Spielberg,
yeah.
effectively
And
telling him that advice.
yeah, and then activists. Look. I When I went to the screening, it was the first. It was the West Coast press screening. Um, and the director of the movie, basically, just when describing the character to the composer, the songwriter, he used the word "she is an activist." And then Ariana DeBose then later said, "I'm glad to portray a woman who is stepping into her power." I mean, this is from the people who these are the words of the people who made this movie, and that's, we're not making this stuff up.
Well, here's what I want to say about this. Here's what I want to say is I appreciate everyone who was brave enough to email Alan and I to express their feelings about what it was like to work on Wish and the decline of Disney Animation Studios. I want to thank you for that. Obviously, we're keeping the identity, we're being very broad in our description. The emails were much more detailed, but these are people that have no interest in being public about this, about what has been happening. And I believe that this isn't just something that has infected Disney animation only. There are a lot of other companies where I believe that this is happening in entertainment. And here's what I will say to those people. This is what I want to say if you are someone who is in this space currently. You need to speak out. Enough is enough. The industry now is shrinking, is contracting. American entertainment is not as popular globally as it used to be. And what we're seeing is not just the decline of our entertainment industry, one of the United States' biggest exports around the world, by the way. American films used to be very popular around the world. That is less so today. You can put in all the activism you want, but we know these Hollywood companies are hypocrites, because they're going to cut out certain shots or lines to accommodate a particular market. The final film of the 9-part Skywalker Star Wars saga ends with a lesbian kiss that was cut out of other markets. Little hypocritical, if you ask me. But what I will say is, for the people that are observing the industry in decline and crumbling, you need to speak out. You need to get over the fear of being called bad names, and perhaps even the fear, maybe even the fear of having your job at stake. If you reached a certain point in your career where you don't give an F, now is the time to speak out, because this industry is on the decline and in shambles unless people say something. So the things I would say is, one, speak out, mention these, talk about these things publicly. And number two, go make better things. Disney is not going to be a company that is going to be around forever if they keep going down this pathway. Alan, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah. Disney was the gold standard. Everybody who wanted to be an animator, Disney was the dream. It was the highest you can get. And from what I can only guess, and from what it sounds like from what people have been telling us, it got so bad at Disney that it no longer became the dream. And it was with great sadness that a lot of people left on their own accord, for that matter, realizing that the dream they thought was Disney was no longer there. And I mean, I've been in those situations at jobs I've had in the past where you realize things had changed so much that it was just like your heart and your passion is gone. And quite frankly, this is the Walt Disney Company right now. And I bet it's the same way with Marvel. I bet it's the same way with Star Wars or with Lucasfilm. They have ruined these companies. They've ruined dreams of not only the fans who have watched it, but the people who dreamt of working there one day. And it's sad and it's heartbreaking. And that's why I keep saying Hollywood is not the dream anymore. Working for one of the big studios is not something you should be pursuing. What you should be pursuing is doing your own work and doing it for yourself, not selling it, and make a name for yourself. Because I don't think you could ever work for one of these companies again without them sucking the life and soul out of you.
Well,
and that's what it seems like is happening right now.
It's like I like to say, corporations kill creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate culture,
and unfortunately, they have control over the things we loved as kids growing up.
Corporate culture kills creativity. It just does. It just does. If you look, I've been around and known artists my whole life. and been fortunate enough to know a lot of filmmakers who are incredibly creative. A few famous ones here and there, and they're the least corporate people you'll ever meet. They're used to be give a middle finger to the man, and now we've employed a generation of people that fall in line and are uh, feel like they're good soldiers in some activist fight. It's destroying things, but I think it's important to speak out and make your own stuff. One last point before we go to your comments and questions here. One last point. Uh, it's the Wild West for indie film, and
Mhm.
I believe a new revolution in indie film will happen. And here's why. Um, Hollywood has all these rules that they put rules when it comes to hiring actors or rules about AI. And can I tell you something right now? Independent film has no rules.
Mhm.
There is a new filmmaker out there right now. Maybe they're even watching the stream that could be the next George Lucas. Give a big middle finger to the rules and say, you know what? We're going to use a ton of AI, and we're going to use AI for special effects, and we're going to use AI for all sorts of things to make a movie that will be competitive with Hollywood. And that's what Hollywood should fear. Not just a new generation of creatives, but a new generation of creatives that can make a product that is as good as Hollywood and that's within reach. And you've seen filmmakers like Gareth Edwards before he did The Creator, before he did Rogue One, and before he did his Godzilla movie. He made a little movie called Monsters. He went to Mexico and he brought a couple actors, and he and his brother did the effects themselves. Look up this movie called Monsters. And it's not the only one. There are a lot of other small indie movies that we cover. Do they have the best scripts? Not all the time. Do they have the best actors? Sometimes. It is within reach now for smaller independent companies to make a movie that looks bigger than a Marvel or Star Wars movie. It's within reach. With AI is just a tool like Photoshop. And someone's going to come along and be able to make a production that is going to blow people's minds, that will look like a Hollywood movie.
Mhm. I just
That's
reviewed a
coming.
movie. I just reviewed a movie this week called The Mail Lady, which is essentially a Fatal Attraction. Um, the camera work wasn't that great, sound wasn't that great, lighting was pretty bad, but the filmmaker himself nailed the pacing of the story down perfectly. He told a story that is essentially Fatal Attraction, but managed to update it and bring in AI and modern technology to it. And if you just get past the fact that he didn't have enough money to hire a full crew, uh, buy equipment, rent lights, but you look at the story itself and the way he paced it and the way he structured it. This guy, if you give him $1 million, he'll tell you a really good story. Uh,
That's That's what I
I'm,
say all the time is like a lot of these small indie movies that we talk about and at Award This, and you'll be able to watch Award This on YouTube. We will be posting the show itself. These are diamonds in the rough. These are
mhm,
birds with broken wings that you want to see healed and soar and fly and reach their full potential. And that's what a lot of the small indie movies that we champion, that's what they're about. And I swear with new tools, shooting digital changed everything. In the
mhm.
early 2000s, when shooting digital became a viable option, when George Lucas shot Star Wars Episode 2 using digital cameras, Star Wars Episode 2, by the way, Attack of the Clones, is shot in 2K. So if they do a 4K release, they'll have to upres it. But like those early, I remember it was a game changer for independent film. When that now there's another game changer, special effects, AI.
Mhm.
It's going to change everything. So my message is speak out, push back against these activists because, and I'll end with this before we go to your comments. There's so many good comments I'm seeing here. Um, we don't need you, Hollywood. Very famously, I've told this story before. A very famous studio executive who worked at Sony was so tired of dealing with people who took everything they do so seriously. He put up a banner that said, "Reminder, we make shit people don't need." They don't need your movies. They don't need your TV shows. You should be grateful to your customers, grateful to the people who give you money. And I believe a revolution in independent filmmaking is coming, and it's going to leave Hollywood in the dust. And it's only a matter of time. As more and more experienced people get pushed out of positions because their old ideas are old fashioned, there's a reason they're there. And there's a reason that consistency and those traditions have resonated because they've been around for decades. And I feel like a lot of the activism I see, I'm like, that's great for a movie made for $50,000, but not in a mainstream movie that people want to just go and lose themselves at the theater. And that's all I have to say about that. And I just hope that some of the people who reached out to us, I hope they'll go more public with some of their remarks, or maybe allow us to get more specific. But we're just speaking broadly about the emails that we've received. Alan, any final thoughts?
No, when you asked me the first time about my final thought, that was my final thought.
Cool. All right.